Red 1 and I'm the team leader.
Hello everybody, I'm Tom Hansford. I fly as Red 3, this is my first year with the team.
Hi everyone, I'm Patrick Kershaw, I'm Red 5 and it's my second year with the team.
Hello, I'm Rich Walker, I'm Red 2, I'm just the right of the boss, it's my first year on the team.
Hi everyone, Adam Collins, I'm Officer Commanding of the Red Arrows.
Good afternoon everybody, I'm Ollie Suckling and I'm Red 4 this year. It's my first year in the team. Perfect, so thank you so much for joining us today. Perhaps first of all let us know about the display you flew earlier. Obviously the weather today was meant to be lovely and clear but turned up being a bit overcast. So how many displays can you do and what goes into selecting which display you're going to do for any given day?
So 3 different choices we have for type of display, pretty much predicated by the cloud base above us. So we have a full show which includes loops, a rolling show where we can do barrel rolls, and a flat show which we saw today which has mostly reversals and things like that. So we have the 3 options, mostly due to weather, also sometimes due to airspace above us, so it could be a nice day, but if we're near London, for example, we might be limited by the airspace above us.
And is it a black and white decision, or is there a certain amount of judgment in terms of which display to choose?
Go on, I'll do this one because this is actually my job. So yeah, I'm the one who decides what display we're going to fly at the time, and it's kind of made up right at the last minute. Well, not made up, make an informed decision right at the last minute. So we will run in for the show, and I roughly know what it's going to be like. So speaking to the supervisor on the ground, so I know what the weather's going to be. But if there's a gap at any point, we can change it, and we will change it. So if we can go full, we will go full. So we can chop and change between any of those 3, the full, the flat, or the rolling, at any point through the first half and second half, and we'll always go full when we can, because it's better and it's a lot more fun to fly.
And what's the typical kind of training time to learn each of those 3 shows? And do you do more training for one than the other, or how does that all work?
So we start winter training we started in December this year, and we'll carry on through. During that time, we'll fly 5 times a week. 3 times a day, 5 days a week. Got there eventually. But we also go away to Greece to make use of the good weather out there, and that's where everything really comes together. We can really get some continuity, see a load of different display sites, and then we'll start to bring the show together. We start with somewhat small formations, and then we'll build it up as we go on. So we'll start with 3 aeroplanes, and we'll build up to 5. And then by the time we go out to Greece, we'll be flying with all the aeroplanes, so we can perform the full show and practice it before we come back to the UK and display it to the British public.
And can you perhaps talk our members through perhaps some of your more well-known manoeuvres? Because there's no obviously fly-by-wire or satellite navigation or anything like that. So how a typical move that they might be familiar with is coordinated up in the sky, and what goes into something like you've just done?
Hi, so all of the manoeuvres are done to a commentary by the boss. So if we all waited for the boss to start moving before we started moving, it would look a little bit like a broken arrow. So we're all listening to what the boss says in terms of when he's going to turn, when he's going to start to roll or pull. And during the course of the training, we learn the cadence of that and what the input is we need. So we listen for what he says, and then as he says it, depending on how far away from him you are, the earlier and earlier you need to start to put your input in so that all of the aeroplanes look like they're moving at the same time, not individually. And that's the same for each basic manoeuvre, so for a loop or a roll or any of the turns. And that's what we learn first during winter training, so we just do those manoeuvres over and over again by themselves until we're half decent at them, and safe probably is the most important thing. And then the size of the formation gets bigger, so we just do those basic manoeuvres with more aeroplanes. And then gradually we start to add those link those manoeuvres together. And then once we started to link those manoeuvres together, then we start to fly the whole show together. And once you start to practice that, in theory, although the boss is probably grimacing over on the left, we're just flying the same inputs on the same timing, so that no matter what the weather's like or whether it's bumpy or windy, we're all putting in the learned inputs we know to make it look like the whole formation is moving as one and not 8 individuals.
And the actual aircraft itself, the Hawk, perhaps for our audience here, what would you liken it to perhaps in the car world in terms of type of car and how it is to fly compared to, say, a Eurofighter or an F-35?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So if you imagine the Eurofighter Typhoon or the F-35 is one of the supercars that you're seeing going up and down the hill, a McLaren or something similar, then I would liken the Hawk to a Caterham or a Lotus Elise or something like that. So there's no driver aids or flying aids for us, no head-up display, no moving map. You're very connected to the controls. There's no computers helping you out. So arguably, if you put a McLaren around a track and you put an Exige or a Caterham around a track, the McLaren's going to be quicker, but I can guarantee you have more fun driving the other one. So for us, it's the same with the Hawk. It's a very pure flying experience. You're very connected to the aircraft, and there's nothing helping you out. Whereas a Typhoon and an F-35, you're almost detached from it, and it's designed to be very easy to fly so that you can operate it tactically and focus on the job that you're doing. Whereas the Hawk still requires that connection and the hands and feet to fly it accurately.
And it's anniversary for the display team next year, and the Hawk obviously still going strong. So must be lots in the pipeline for a big year next year.
We've got several things coming up. So it's our 60th display season next year, so our diamond anniversary, which is handy given the formation that we fly. We're likely to be doing an overseas tour as part of that, but also several events in the UK celebrating the 60th, and it's an anniversary for the Hawk coming up as well. So double-hatted there. But we're still flying the original version of the Hawk. So I mentioned the Caterham of the Sky. It's still the original T1 that came into service in the late 70s. Hasn't changed a great deal since then. The Hawk that's now used for training is much more modern with glass cockpit and so on. That's a better stepping stone for the F-35. But for us, 60th anniversary next year, and I'm flying with the jet that came to the team in around 1980.
And tell us about the selection process, because obviously really involved and a lot more to it than just the flying.
So we invite applicants. So one of the things people don't realise, we are all RAF pilots. So we're all RAF fighter pilots. So we're still in the service of the Red Arrows as an RAF squadron. And what we do every year, we invite applicants from what they call the flight lieutenant rank from that community of pilots to apply for the team. And then we'll sit down, go through all their reports, and those reports go all the way back to when they first joined the RAF. And you're looking through all the kind of history of how they did in flying training, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll basically take 6 to 9 applicants away with us on a shortlist. And they'll come join us in Greece when we're on our spring training, fly with us 3 times a day, 5 days a week, see what every position is like in the team. And then there are some formal parts as well. So one of the big things is the flying test. So you'll be in the back will be the Red 8 or Red 9 jet through a full practice. And at the end of that display practice, Red 1 and then this year Red 8, they will go off. And basically Red 8 will put you on the wing of Red 1, and Red 1 will do a loop, and he'll do that twice, and you'll do 2 loops, and then he'll do 2 barrel rolls. Then they'll move you a little bit closer, and you do 2 more loops and 2 more barrel rolls. And there's no feedback whatsoever, so what we're looking for is self-discipline, self-critique for those individuals to pick up their errors, and then see how they do on the subsequent manoeuvres. And you get nothing back from the testing officer as such, so there's no feedback at that point there. It's just a case of you have to really critique yourself. As well as that, we do a formal interview as well. So we'll do a formal interview with the OC, and then a team leader, and then a group captain who's equivalent of an army colonel, and they will basically ask you questions on yourself, the history of the team, and kind of ultimately your motivation as to why you want to join the Red. So it's quite an intense period. I went through it twice, so most of us have been here through it a couple of times. The first time I did it in 2019, I didn't get in. Obviously I was pretty good about that, but again, one of the things we're looking for is you will have days in the display season or in training when it doesn't go according to plan, and it's about how you kind of focus on what went wrong in that and then try and fix it and then go back. And thankfully 2 years later, in 2021, I got in, but it's quite waiting for the results, quite a nerve-wracking experience.
And there's a social part to it as well.
Yeah, so the big thing is obviously we spend a lot of time together as a team, so it's for those applicants to spend time with the team as well, because ultimately they can at the end of the week say, this is not for me, I don't want to do this job, whatever it might be, and so it's kind of, we can do a final, yes, this person will fit into this team, but the big thing ultimately is the flying test and the interview, the formal parts of it, which is what we select the people off.
Brilliant. Well, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask the Red Arrows team? If I could just borrow one of your mics.
My son has one as well, but my question is, what sort of proportion at any one time would you expect of active Typhoon and Lightning pilots to be ex-team members?
We're pretty much all ex-Typhoon. at the moment. So Ollie works in the F-35 sim, but we've got no F-35 pilots who have been on the front line who've been released to the team. So we're pretty much all Typhoon pilots. Obviously, Rich has flown Harry as well. I've flown Tornado as well. So there's predominantly Typhoon. As in people who've been in the team.
And frontline now with people who used to be in the team. Yes.
There's a few, yeah. So there's a few people who've left the team and got promoted, either to be squadron commanders or group captains or air commodores. So there is plenty of people who were ex-Reds who have gone back into the service and got promoted.
Brilliant. Any other questions for the team at all? Got another one here.
How many Gs do you usually pull doing air displays like that?
So in the first half, the display that you've just seen will all be together. So whilst we're all together, I will pull up to sort of 3.5, 4G, which is quite a lot when all the team pilots are trying to stay on the wing and make sure that we're moving as one. In the second half, when we split and start doing the more dynamic stuff, so Hannah and the Sigro pair, they'll pull up to sort of 7, maybe 8G, which is quite a lot.
Anyone else at all? Question for these guys? Lisa, you've got one at the back, if you can get your running shoes on.
Have any of you met Tom Cruise?
Have any of you met Tom Cruise?
Yes, is the short answer. And he is short. But yes, last year at RIAT, we met him.
Any more? I got a question at the back, the yellow cap, Lucy.
Do you have a favourite plane that you've ever flown? In the Red Arrows or in the RAF?
I think disregarding the Harrier pilot, there's still two people down from me. Most people like the Hawk, especially the T1, so the comparison I gave to the Caterham and so on, that is why this jet is most people's favourite. There are a couple of exceptions, so I'll let someone else cover off that, but certainly for me, the Hawk, given the feedback you get and the simplicity of it, it's a very pure flying experience.
I wondered if you could tell us a bit about your support crew, ground crew that we don't necessarily see, please, all your backup on the ground.
So we have got some of our, we call them the blues because of the colour of the suits they wear, but it's important to recognise that the Red Arrows is actually around 150 strong. So as the commanding officer, my squadron is 150 personnel. There are only 11 of us that wear the red suits, but that's the tip of the iceberg, if you like, with what we achieve. So the aircraft that you see in the sky, that clearly isn't possible without the support of the engineers, logisticians, administrators, drivers, all of the different trades that we have, and they're a cross-section of the trades in the RAF. We're all current serving members. We have some reservists, some civilian contractors, but it's a really important point to stress. And those engineers, there are 11 of those each year who are selected to be what's known as the circus. And they are the engineers that fly in the back seat of our aircraft between displays. So we don't display with them in the back seat, but if we're transiting somewhere to then land the aircraft, brief for a display, they will fly with us and then service the aircraft while we're briefing. We'll then do the display, land back, they'll service again, and move on to the next place. And that means we can operate unsupported, which is very different from, for example, the Blue Angels or the Thunderbirds, who take a big road team with them wherever they go. We can go somewhere, carry out a display with no ground footprint at all, just the 11 pilots, the 11 engineers, and then move on to the next place. What we can't do is put the colour back into the pod, so we need a small ground team for that. So if we're going for a longer period, then we will have a ground footprint, but we can be largely self-sufficient for a couple of days, and that's because we're flying engineers in the back seat.
Brilliant. And time for one more question, maybe, if there's any more questions for these guys? No, I think it's, on behalf of everyone, thanks so much for popping by. It's great to see you up in the sky at these shows. And all of the Red Arrows, thank you very much.